Hey, this is Nick, Mining Guy. Today I've got a book where I immediately want to give a shout out to my friend Kerem at the Next Book Bull Market Move website. The book is How I Made $2 Million in the Stock Market by Nicolas Darvas. This is a classic from the late 50s, early 60s, and I never would have read this book as soon as I have without Kerem's recommendation, and also seeing some of the interviews and articles he's had on his site. And he even interviewed me after I read it, and so you can see some of those links I will have below this video, and that's a good starting point. But I wanted to make this video to add a few additional points we didn't get to in the interview, which I just think were really surprising to me, considering that this is a really well-known book, and I just didn't know what the details would be based on the Amazon reviews and things I had read a few years ago. And I love it that the book starts with the author's experimentation with junior mining stocks in Canada, and that didn't work out for him. And he did lots of trial and error, and I think the model of how he spent years learning about this absolutely applies to today. I love the way that he described it. He actually seems surprisingly humble, for all the money that he made, and very, straightforward, but with excellent details about his process. I especially love chapter 5, which is titled Cables Around the World. I think this also applies to today. Really interesting for me to think about, because so much of his trading was not real time at all. He had, multiple day time lag, because he would trade, via cables and getting newspapers days late. For me specifically, that is a parallel to how I have to trade ASX stocks on Australia. And that's just because of the particular broker that I use. And some people could do all this trading through a broker like Interactive Brokers, where you can do real time. But the point is, you actually think about stocks very differently when you can't trade them in real time. With the ASX, I often have to put limit orders in the same way that he did in the 50s and 60s, and then you hope they get filled, and you're always with a time lag. It makes you think about stocks very differently. And I just want to be clear that it seems like a disadvantage to not be in real time, but it actually can be advantageous. And he really makes that point, because later on in his investing, speculating career, and speculating is a better way to put it. He's definitely more of a speculator. He actually had less success by trying to change that process. So that is fascinating. That's a must-read part of the book. I love the way he describes how he actually felt when he owned stocks and the art of it. And he's a dancer, and so he comes at it from such a different path than the very technical and quantitative guys these days. And I think that still applies to today. But very importantly, what worked for him, I think, worked very well in that specific time period. And it wouldn't surprise me at all if people starting in the late 60s and 70s tried to apply all of his techniques and they didn't work at all in those eras. So that's a bit of a negative. I think you have to be careful knowing that different type styles work for different eras. You could argue that the intelligent investor or security analysis style of Warren Buffett or Benjamin Graham works in a wider variety of eras. I would say that's not necessarily the case either. But the point is, this was very momentum driven, and for the late 50s, he had the right technique, and he figured it out on his own, and it's great that he was able to do that. But it's something to be very careful about, and that's exactly why we like to read multiple books, whether it's on investing or speculating, and all of it applies to junior mining, and junior mining even has its own specific things, and there's not even a best book for that. So you pick up bits of information everywhere, and this is an essential part of that. But one final point, and I really should pound this point home more often, I am so skeptical of margin. I don't think you need to use margin, and even stop losses, and some of the things he describes here. I think that doesn't necessarily, it could work for you, but I think you have to be very careful. A lot of people have made a lot of money very quickly by going into debt, but that's also how you go bankrupt. And so he got to 2 million really fast because of it, and he describes it really well, but it's very easy to get into a lot of trouble with that. So, just one other, little bit of warning, but this is, in my opinion, a must-read book. I got it very cheaply. New copies are cheap these days, and I highly recommend it, especially if you haven't heard of it before. But if you were like me and you had heard of it, and you needed a little more of a nudge to actually read it, that's what I'm doing right here. So hopefully you pick up How I Made $2 Million in the Stock Market. And again, check out some of the links below this YouTube. This is Nick the Money Book Guy. Thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. Bye.